Mike, thank you for emailing that hydrogen cell technology. It was helpful. I didn't know that was a carbon sequestration possibility.
Yeah, and it's in maybe.
We are live now.
We're live. Okay, we're live. Okay, good evening, everyone. I call to order the meeting of the NVTA Finance Committee for Thursday, September 12, 2024. First, I would like to welcome Mr. Randy Minshew. Congratulations. We are really happy to have you back to the NVTA, and I'm happy to have you in the Finance Committee. And Mr. Minshew is the gubernatorial appointment. That's a toughie. So welcome. Okay, next we have a vote to approve the May 9th, 2024 draft meeting minutes. Any changes, comments, whatever? Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I think I would abstain since I wasn't present for the meeting.
So it's still second?
Yes.
Okay, I will second that.
Okay.
For discussion.
Okay, all in favor? And one abstention. Thank you. Okay, out of cycle forward appropriations is the one.
Thank you, Mayor Rochelle. This, in this item, we have two appropriations. The first one comes to us from the city of Fairfax for $700,000. It is what we call an out of cycle appropriation, which means this project was originally approved for funding in fiscal 25. However, the city didn't put in a request. Now they're putting in the request. So this $700,000 automatically had been included in the April budget discussion for fiscal 25. The next one is a little bit larger at 58.9 million, and this is from Arlington County. This money was approved in the 22-27 6-year program. So typically, it would have gotten an appropriation in fiscal 26 or 27. Hence, we call it a forward appropriation. When we do these, and you heard me say this as part of the budget discussion, we go through a calculation process essentially to make sure that the authority doesn't over obligate itself, because we are using money in fiscal 25 for a project that is based on revenue to be received in 26 or 27. Staff does recommend both of these. As I said, for the city of Fairfax project, that would have gotten an appropriation had we known that they wanted it at the time we were preparing the budget. And the Arlington request, I do want to remind you, is reduced by 21.1 million because last month there was a transfer from this project to the CC to DCA project also in Arlington. So it has an effective amount of the 58.9. We've identified what would be carryover funds in the regional revenue fund that would cover this amount, so it's not going to be issued or in fiscal issues. And with that, be happy to reply to any questions.
Comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Snyder.
Do either of these were off all? And after the 58 million is taken out, it's really access to it.
Well, we're wrapping up the audit, probably about 100 million. 100.
How is that?
Not including our working capital reserve of 120 million. And of course, when we do these, we also can fall back on short-term loans. We're actually issuing that.
So you're not saying it's creates.
Actually, I'm thinking it's a pretty good use of the just calculated fund balance from the fiscal 24 audit that is getting wrapped up now.
Mr. Minshew, any questions?
I would only note, Madam Chair, that 58.9 million is a very big number. That most certainly catches my attention. And I wouldn't miss Monty to answer this. I've been away from this for years. there any committed funds from the authority to Arlington County that have not been drawn down in large number capacity?
I have to answer generally yes, but that's not uncommon for all of our project sponsors in all jurisdictions. Because we fund the total amount of the project in the first appropriation. So if somebody applies for a $10 million project, the authority commits 10 million. Likewise, if it's a $100 million project. And that is essentially what gives us the ability to do these forward appropriations. Typically, a city or county or any public entity would not be able to spend future year fiscal revenue, which may be where you're going.
Yes.
And that would be a red flag for an audit. We have worked with our independent external auditors to come up with a process that keeps track of this. And this process actually is saving the authority significant amounts of money, because otherwise an entity would typically issue debt penalties. We're essentially using the balance of our investment portfolio, which is unspent project funds, to create the capacity to allow projects to advance, in this case, 1 to 2 years ahead of schedule.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, who would like to read the suggested motion?
I would finance committee recommend to the transportation authority to regional revenue fund city of Fairfax, $700,000 road route intersection. C X 015 Arlington 58,000 Olsen Metro Rail Station West Entrance Arlington 0.
I've got a second the motion, Madam Chair, but I wonder, this appears to be a divisible motion. Would it be possible to leave it by the question? Either two or both?
Between the Fairfax and Arlington.
Yes,
If you make a motion.
I would make that motion, Madam Chair. If you'd like.
I'll do that. Well, let's go in. Is that a friendly amendment or do we have to start? I can withdraw the motion. Withdraw the motion. Instead, move the finance committee recommended Virginia Transportation Authority. The city of Fairfax is $7,000 for Germantown Road, about 29 intersection. See it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries. Thank you.
Madam Chair, finance committee recommend. Transportation. Olsen Metro Station Entrance 0.
I've got a second that for discussion.
Okay, is there a discussion?
No, I will be voting no, Madam Chairman. Not yet comfortable with.
I'm sorry.
I will be voting no on Councilman Snyder's second motion tonight. I'm not yet comfortable with the financial law professor.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? One opposition. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to number 4, finance team activities report.
Thank you, Mayor Rochelle. Typically, when there's a long gap between finance committee meetings, and I think the last meeting was in May, we had no action items until tonight. We do this type of a report. I'll give you a bit of a recap of what we've been working on. Obviously, one of the biggest things we've been working on is the annual audit. Peggy Teal behind me continues to make this look way easier than it is, and I thank her for taking it for me. We are the audit processing on schedule. We have not gotten any questions that are, I would call, not pending. Usually you get a sense of where your audit's going when you get questions that we have difficulty answering, and we haven't encountered any of those at this point. We are getting ready and we'll be working with the auditors to add a new supplementary schedule to the audit. About 7 or 8 years ago, we added a list of projects to the audit in the supplemental section, which is a section that doesn't go through a whole lot of audit scrutiny because it's not part of the financial statements. It's there for additional information. That list basically showed, given that we have a large investment portfolio, showed that the money in the investment portfolio was tied to a list of projects. So if a reader of the financial statements wouldn't just look at an organization with a very large investment portfolio, but could look and see that all of that money is allocated through appropriations to an extensive list of projects. We're finding that doesn't really tell the whole story. So what we are going to do is we have added funding programs that now stretch out to 2029. We're going to do a second list that shows the amount of future project funding commitments that the authority has done, such as were there to be a diminishment in the revenue stream, those projects, one of those or more of those projects would be the projects that subsequently would have to be canceled. So it shows both sides of that, and I think it would help the reader of the financial statements to get a very good view of where we sit financially, not only in the projects that we are committed to, which therefore created this large investment portfolio, but also the future obligations that are not specific financial obligations yet because the authority hasn't budgeted that money, but it has committed to funding, making those funding commitments as they come due. Again, that report will be showing a value of about $1.8 billion. The next item I have is the new office. We moved up to the 6th floor in August. Conference room furniture is due to arrive the 19th, 20th of this month. Next week, Thursday and Friday. Galley space and some decor enhancements are waiting for schedule sequencing. That work actually, we just found out after this is written, is going to start Monday next week. Meeting room audio visual technology has been installed, it's being configured, and we have staff will be getting trained on it. It'll be very nice to have our own equipment, so we can go through a learning curve and just basically control that part ourselves. The audio visual equipment includes multiple cameras, hearing aid systems, microphones. It is pretty much state of the art. All financial matters are within the term sheet that the authority approved as we got ready to sign the lease. We are not looking at any costs directly hitting the authority. We are funding all of these improvements, including the technology and the furniture, through tenant improvements negotiated with the landlord. And in addition to that, we expect any day to receive a wire transfer from the landlord of $890,000 as the final commitment from what we had negotiated towards the end of last year. So we're about a week and a half behind schedule, which is put a little stress on us for the October meeting. But on a financial basis, we are well within the term sheets. My last update is, having listened to board members talk in the formal authority meeting and after meetings, I have gathered a desire to kind of measure the authority's adopted core values. And at the same time, I am very recently seeing that economic analyses are starting to come out that include these type of topics. So obviously, we would like to expand the economic analysis to include those measures, include those items. However, if we do it with our currently scheduled analysis, that will not be ready for the General Assembly session next year. So what I'm actually looking for guidance from the committee on is that we go ahead and conduct that regular analysis and then start a process to issue an RFP for a more expansive economic analysis that will include the authority's core values. A big part of when you start to measure something on the back end, you have to make sure that you are accounting for it on the front end as well. So there'll be a feedback loop in this to the authority's application processes for future funding applications. So it's very important that when we look at adding in a very new topic on an economic analysis basis, that we do it the right way. I really don't want to rush into it, nor do I want to delay regular economic analysis. So I think this is a good approach. We won't be asking for a budget commitment. My suggestion is to do the RFP and come back to the authority and ask for a budget amount. And once we, quite honestly, I don't know how to price this right now. But we'll come back, and I think as we get further in tonight's meeting, you'll see where there are operating budget resources available.
Mr. Longby, I can see where the timing issue is very important. They should have something ready for the General Assembly. That's a very important document, considering that we use it as a part of our lobbying effort. And to protect. Comments or questions? Yes.
So this is an analysis of projects or analysis.
It's analysis of it'll add the core values of equity, safety, and sustainability to our economic analysis of projects.
Because with every funding program that we adopt, we do an economic impact analysis. So the most recent one was done, I guess, 2 years ago when we did our adoption 2 years ago. And part of the reason doing that, like, we wanted to make the case that we're not only funding transportation projects and reducing congestion, there's a direct correlation between these transportation investments and what it means for the economy. And we've been trying to make that case loud and clear, as others have been trying to make the case of, investing in transit and what it means to the economy. But since we're multimodal, we're trying to make the case and show the investments in transportation has a direct impact on the economy. This time around, we want to incorporate the core values, equity, safety, and sustainability into that analysis. So it's the same analysis that we have previously done, but with our core values and core.
Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Snyder?
To help explanation. Madam Chairman, I'm curious, are there any deadlines we're looking at? I know the budget cycle sometime in November, we'll see the money committees meet every December. They're working on the government's last budget. Any deadline we should know about, Mr. Long?
We typically have it ready in December for use when the General Assembly convenes in January.
I see. Okay.
Because I'm sorry.
It doesn't have to be in for budget staff review before then?
No, so we usually Chair Randall is invited to present to the NOVA delegation. And we want to make sure that if she's invited again, we have that on hand. But we also distribute it to the rest of the members of the House and Senate as well, not only the NOVA delegation.
The analysis not only shows the economic impact of the projects in Northern Virginia, but it also shows the impact for all of Virginia. So it's very important. Some of these contracts actually lead to business outside of the Northern Virginia region.
Right, because what on our current one, we show the number of new jobs that is created and the jobs that are permanent, as I can say. Not, we're talking about people who don't just come and then the project is complete and they leave. We're talking about new jobs as a result that stay as a result of the project. And then we also get into things such as travel time saved because of the investments and things of that nature. So it's very informative document. but we also wanted to show the economic impacts and of course add report value.
Mr. Long, is there any action that we need to take?
If I may summarize and the committee tell me if you agree. We will do the economic analysis as we have always done and take as a new initiative looking pyramid to have the core values also. So what if that pyramid goes through, we will take the basic report, if you will, that we have done, merge it with that. And in future years, both will be done in the same 2 years.
So you're looking for more of a consensus from us. Mr. Snyder? Thank you.
Thumbs up.
And that's it for the update, unless there's any questions.
Okay, moving on to number 5, investment portfolio report, Ms. Sands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. This report on investment activity is through July 31st. And the benchmark table on page 2, you'd see that NVTA's performance is better than LGRP extended maturity pool. And we'll explore the concept in slides that I'm going to present.
And while Deb is setting that up, because of the shortness of the cables, she has to be down on that side of the table. And she's a very soft-spoken person, so she's committed to giving it her all to project her voice.
Thank you.
So to begin with, let me give an overview of our portfolio strategy. So the first is the portfolio duration adjustment. We are adjusting the portfolio to align with the falling interest rates by targeting a 2 to 3 year maturity range and a 5-year maturity range. So the 5-year chart that we have a handout to everyone. So if you look at the chart, it's a 5-year chart starting from September 24 to September 29. So the orange marker shows where the yield is currently, and the instruments are spread across different months throughout the next 5 years tenure. So this, and you will see there are few securities that are below 1%, and that's because of the pandemic. When we actually bought the security itself or the interest rate itself were below 1%. And rest of them are positioned well throughout the 5-year tenure. Second is the benchmark reactions to market changes. So the 2 benchmark that we compare our portfolio with is the LGIP extended maturity benchmark. Now this benchmark actually reflects fluctuation in market rates pretty immediately. So it's more of a real-time view of the market portfolio. The second is the ICE-FOFA benchmark, and in contrary, this benchmark responds slowly due to its 18-month average calculation. So because of this, the market changes are at a more gradual pace. And when we compare our portfolio adjustment, we align with the market trends more gradually, adjusting at a slower pace, but to benefit the shift as the market increases. Now, next slide will give you a little a visual representation of what I was talking about. So the blue curvy line represents the market changes, and the orange curvy line represents NVTA's performance. So when the interest rates were actually low back in 2020 in pandemic, and when it started to go up, our performance or our portfolio started to catch up. And eventually, since the Feds are talking about interest rate cut this month, in fact, will be next week. And eventually, when the market changes will go down, and we'll still be resilient, our portfolio will still be resilient and stable. And when the market would rise back up again, and we'll be quickly able to catch up with the market increases.
So if I may, this portfolio strategy limits the impact on the portfolio when market rates decrease. It still leaves the portfolio in a position to capture future increases. What's unique with the NVTA portfolio is it started essentially in our lifetime. I mean, it started about 7 years ago, but of course, we were almost in a zero interest rate environment then, so we were never able to build that upper grouping, whereas you look at this, at the handout, you can look out 5 years, we have securities at the value shown that are going to be 5% for 5 years, regardless of what the market does. And that creates that stabilizing dotted line in between the market troughs, where we will be able to show very responsible use governance of the funds while they're waiting to be used for projects. And it insulates us from that bottom drop, which is where we were when we started the program. So this is the first opportunity in the market fluctuations to show how the portfolio will maintain its value as the market rates drop.
So as Mike mentioned, we are actually, my third point actually talks about that, which is preserving yield when the market rate declines. Now, our current portfolio is positioned in such a way that we have preserved the yield over an extended period of time, as the handout shows. And the maturity chart and the other strategy that we are doing and most of the organizations are doing is we are securing callable bonds. So what is callable bonds? Callable bonds is something that gets called before its maturity date. And there are different frequencies for it, either monthly, quarterly, or even continuous, which means it can call daily, like any day for that matter. And now why people are buying callable bonds? Because of its higher interest rates and higher yield. It's very attractive. But there is an uncertainty attached to it, and there's a market rate attached to it. So because of which it's very high risk instrument. But we, on the other hand, are securing callable bonds that are government sponsored. We're getting callable agencies. So which are not only safe, but it's also reliable and creditworthy. And the callable that we secure are one-time callable bonds that has 2 to 2.5 years of call protection. So even if the market goes upside down, will still be secured during that period. So this way we are actually preserving the yield by keeping safety in mind. With this, I want to conclude my presentation that I'm going to show you a benchmark comparison chart, just like we have spoken about it. And the blue line actually represents NVTA's performance, and the orange line represents LGIP extended maturity. You would see how it's been up and down because of the sudden market changes. We, on the other hand, are performing well, and we are on the upward trend. And the green line represents the ICE BOFA, and because of its 18-month average calculation, we are actually on a break-even point where it's 4.7 month in June and 4.71 in July. And starting August, it will take a downward turn, and we'll still be on the upward. With this, I conclude my presentation. Happy to take these questions.
Sir, questions? Mr. Mitchell?
Mr. Chair, I went through the list of the portfolios, and I noticed that we have about $27 million in muni bonds that come from the state of Maryland and the state of Florida. And maybe I didn't notice that when I cruised through NVTA, but I'm sure the Governor Moore and Governor Sanders don't mind us investing in their states, but kind of curious if we do much investing out of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
We just had some Virginia ones mature off. Virginia would be our preference, but when you're buying municipals, a portfolio of our size is typically buying them on the secondary market. And they very seldom come up. So when we do have them, it's usually something that a broker has proffered to us before it actually gets to the open market. There's a relationship.
You don't have any investment policies that say we have to only buy Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Snyder, do you have any questions, comments?
Mayor Rochelle, if you would indulge me, we had a transaction opportunity that just came up today. We have a $19 million maturity. Deb went through her process we found a good instrument. She went to the market to lock it in. It's a agency. During the course of the day, the market actually took a 5 basis point dip. Then took a 5 basis point. Well, the market was down when we started shopping for this instrument. It came back up by 5 basis points. And because we have the Bloomberg terminals, The broker knows that we're seeing it, and so they added that 5 basis points on the return of that investment. Because we're actively in the live market. That 5 basis point represents $45,000 in interest earned. So that one transaction paid for both Bloomberg licenses. And it's because not to do a character assassination on brokers, but if a broker knows you don't have access to Bloomberg, they're typically not going to tell you the market just went in your favor and you can earn an additional $45,000. But if they know that you're watching it, they're not going to take the reputational risk of trying to figure it off the top.
Well, I certainly wish the federal government could manage their funds as well as the NVTA is. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Sen. Very good.
And I'll also note that as a soft-spoken individual, she swims with sharks on a daily basis and does very well.
Well done.
Thank you, Chair. There's a term that you use in here that not in my vocabulary, supranational. Is that same
World
thing?
Bank.
I see. I saw the investment and the word supranational scrapping. I've never seen that. That apply to international securities or?
It's just World Bank.
Just really.
Do you have any further comments, Mr. Longy, or should I move on? Okay. On to number 6, monthly revenue report, Mr. Longy.
This essentially is the unaudited revenue wrap-up report for fiscal 24. We had some challenges, but we came through pretty well. Going to Appendix A, you'll see that sales tax outperformed the estimate by just under 9%. The Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program, which is an estimate done by VDOT, underperformed the estimates by 12%. Regional Congestion Relief Fee, also known as grantors, or commonly known as grantors, which is subject to real estate transactions, really took a hit at 30%. The NVTD transfer is a flat 20 million, so there's estimating that, so we don't have variance. Overall, because sales tax performed so well, we ended the year 2.94% above estimate, which does generate the money to be for appropriations. Because that money you would wait for another 2-year cycle before it can get redeployed on projects. So that's the type, that difference is the type of money that creates the flexibility for us. Looking at page 2. The first chart there shows the difference, the actual difference between 23 and 24 on the revenues. Again, sales tax did well, grantor's tax not so well. And then the IOP transfer was down year to year as well. One of the things we have done is we've tried all of our revenue estimates, we've tried to end the year with a pretty decent positive balance. Because the last thing we want to do is to come back to the authority and say, we missed our revenue targets, what projects do you want to cancel? We have other things that we do before that. That's just kind of the philosophy. So actually the fact that the difference between actual to estimate was only 12 million this year, where it was 23 million last year, I actually look at that as being a good thing. It means we're improving our accuracy. The fact that revenue went down also helped as well. It wasn't all just genius from the floor. Attachment B shows you the yearly totals, the 30% distribution by jurisdiction. That is the last column on the right. You'll see those numbers. Tells you what each jurisdiction got in their 30% distributions. Then I have one note on the investment portfolio. And it's back in the staff report on page 2, IDB 2. The investment portfolio is projected to earn 35 million. It actually earned 66 million. And that 66 is made up of 36 million in realized gains. In other words, money is in our bank. And almost 30 million in accrued interest. In other words, that's interest that we haven't actually received yet, but it's coming. And we have actually already earned. There is an additional gain, unrealized gain, of 24.3 million. I never count that. I never speak of that as revenue because you can't spend it. It doesn't exist. At June 30th, the portfolio was valued above the market at by 24 million. On July 1, that number changed. And it changes every day. So just like as I've told previous committees, don't worry about an unrealized loss because we didn't sell the portfolio on June 30th. You can't spend an unrealized gain. So it's a way for the accounting industry to try to get government financial statements to look more like corporate financial statements. With that, that's my. Okay. And again, if I may, those interest earnings then go to our ability to control it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Mr. Longy, probably don't know the answer to that, but the reduction of interest. That's due to reduction in people reporting advancing needs or a reduction in people doing financing, mortgage financing, needs of trust. It's the reduction kind of surprised me in this dynamic region.
Local jurisdictions have been struggling with. I mean, this is essentially a different rate, the same tax county, cities, and towns get. And grantors requires two things. It is the value of the property that's transacted, or the instrument that's recorded, and it's the number of transactions. So while the value of property has risen dramatically in Northern Virginia, especially through the pandemic, properties aren't selling. It's the transaction volume in this cycle that's dragging the number.
I note that where Mr. Turner and I come from, we see a lot of the data center advances happen with numbers that will surprise you. And our clerk of court once said, I love it when all these data center transactions happen because they're deep into 8 figures and we tax them all. So I figured with what we're seeing in Loudoun, that would be a regional phenomenon, which means the grantors actually going up, not going down.
Well, not to say we need more data center transactions, but I think it's the decline in the other real estate aspects, just not trade, has had that big an impact. I mean, certainly, transactions like that, help, but people aren't selling their homes because they don't have their interest rates, et cetera, et cetera.
The move up.
So the move up market has basically been dead.
Thank you.
Mr. Steiner? That's it. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to number 7, the monthly operating budget report.
I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly. We only used 81% of our authorized budget, but we are carrying over substantial funds because we have procurements and contracts that haven't paid out yet. So most of that we move over into fiscal year.
Any questions by anyone?
I do want to make one note. We did this for the first time. The operating budget has now the funding for that, the cash behind it, is now placed with LGIP because it's gotten large enough that typically a fund, and the operating budget is in the operating budget fund. The interest that's earned on the fund typically stays. It wasn't a very material number in the past, but we did make it that breakout so we can track the interest earnings on the unspent operating budget. That generated $44,000, which doesn't seem like a lot of money, but if we do that every year for 10 years, something gets real. And that $44,000 will just offset the next fiscal year operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy. Moving on to NVTA update, Ms. Backman.
Madam Chair, I have none that cannot wait until the board meeting.
Thank you. Then, well, as always, thanks to staff for all your very hard work. We really appreciate it. Is there any other business to come before the committee?
Mayor Shell. For you guys, adjourn.
I was just gonna say, because Danny was saying that the bylaws require 3 voting members or recommendations from 3 other localities. What I'm gonna do in order to not hold the localities outside of court appropriation requests up, we will put it on the authority agenda for next month, because again, all committees make recommendations, and we will note that while we had a physical forum present, we didn't have the bylaw requirement of 3 localities. In the meantime, we have to work on updating the bylaw, because we don't have designees for the committees. So while Supervisor Turner is here in place of Chair Randall, he isn't voting, although he's voting at the authority meeting. And then as Mr. Minshew is the gubernatorial appointee, voting member of the authority, we have to update the bylaws because he's not representative of the locality. And that's all. Okay. If you don't mind, Madam Chair.
I beg your pardon.
If you don't mind, I'll take it to the authority for approval next month, noting our little quagmire.
Yes, ma'am.
If I may, Mr. Mitchell, I'll work with you to give you a better understanding of the safeguards we have.
Is there any further business to come before the committee? Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
That's 10 more than